Post-secondary education already comes with a hefty price tag. On top of that, there are additional costs to consider. However, some students are unaware of the expenses not included in tuition.
I don't think I had any expectations that they would fund things for us. I think I just wasn't expecting things to be as high, or that there wouldn't be any sort of guidance financially.
According to Ryerson, books and supplies can cost anywhere from $1,000 to $10,000. In a statement written to the Ryersonian, a university representative wrote that Ryerson provides updated costs in compliance with OSAP regulations, but has no obligation to track those costs over time. Neither the representative or Ryerson president Mohammed Leshemi confirmed whether the university collects information on program-specific books and supply costs. Therefore, these additional program expenses are not readily available for students prior to enrollment.
It wasn't until after you got accepted that you really understood the amount of money that you have to put in. And I think it's probably like an extra $2,000 minimum on top of your tuition and then living.
There was this one specific class where we were required to have a $300+ art kit. And we weren't told that until very late into the semester, right before we were supposed to go into the new class. And I think just that specifically is when I just was very concerned with how much they disclose upfront with their students.
In fourth-year film studies, students are required to produce and fund their own film for course credit.
You have to do your thesis film, which the professors tell you you can't go over $10,000, but it's not Ryerson's $10,000, it's your $10,000 that you have to get from somewhere. Now the average thesis film usually spends about $6,000. Even right now, I'm in my fourth year, I'm doing my thesis, and I had to pay tuition for my mandatory classes, which include this production class, but I'm also still paying for my thesis, so I don't even really know what that tuition is going towards for that class.
When asked about the additional costs in film school, Program Director John Charver says that they give the students the freedom to determine how much they want to spend by having a project limit instead of a baseline.
Sometimes students decide that they want to make a project that's very ambitious and very costly, but that's their decision to make. It's not something that the faculty is saying, go out and spend all this money. So I think it's completely a misunderstanding of what makes a good film to think that there's somehow this economic advantage to spending more money on the film. So to this notion that somehow students who don't have as much money are at a creative disadvantage when they're making film projects, I don't buy that argument.
However, students argue that cheaper production alternatives force them to compromise quality, an option that isn't always favorable for aspiring creatives.
I think the real issue is that people exit the program with a stronger portfolio if they have the money to invest in it. Like they're making better work when they're there. And then when you make better work in class, other people want to work with you. People are also outside working in the industry with the projects they've made in school. And so it just becomes like a microcosm of how, within the wider Toronto industry, the people that have more money to spend on their passion projects, it just snowballs and they get more success. And even though that's the way that the real world works, I think a lot of us have went to school because we wanted the support and the safety that comes with being at a university and learning within that. But a lot of the same practices happen, and it's just everyone's kind of out for themselves. And if you have the money to spend on better projects, you might get better grades, but I think the biggest benefit is you have a portfolio exiting that makes you look more desirable to outside work.
For myself and for some other people, they're so talented and they can't afford to do or learn certain techniques that they want to do. Like you could have a synthetic version of some other notion or finishing that may give off a similar effect, but it's not the real thing. So if someone like me wants to do something so big and voluminous, but they can't afford the paper or the muslin to go with that, then it limits you a lot.
In a phone call conversation with fashion school chair Dr. Ben Berry, he said, "I think the solution is to continue to create and extend bursary programs for students, for fabrics and materials. I think it's about providing access, so students are able to fully materialize the collections they want to design. If there are more ways that we can provide access, that is our plan." Despite the program's effort at providing more accessibility for students, some are still put at a financial disadvantage. Working with a lower budget comes with more creative limitations that will inevitably affect the result. Therefore, some students believe that a higher production value equals a better grade.
I think if you have the money to buy an expensive fabric and you have the money to pay for contractors, and I don't know, like before submission you have the money to even go and pay and get it pressed. Like these are all things that are considered in quality control when your profs are marking your garments. And if you have the money to have all of these great fancy things, I think by default you would end up getting a higher grade.
Film students have also stated that the same applies for their program. However, Tarver says that this is not the case. In fact, he argues that a lower production value can work in a student's favor.
If a student can make an amazing film with very little money, that's something that often a producer will look at, because that's what that's a great skill to have, right? It's a very, very marketable skill that, wow, you did this and it didn't even cost you any money. It's like, just imagine now, I'm talking from the perspective of, say, a potential producer who might want to hire a student to make a film. If that student can demonstrate that they were able to make an amazingly great little film with very little money spent, that producer's like, wow, that's someone we want to hire, right? Why not? we want to hire the student who can make a great film with no money, not a mediocre film with a lot of money, right?
Although cheaper alternatives exist for students, some project costs are fixed and mandatory. Brooks noticed that as the expenses began to pile up, the financial disparity between students became very obvious right after first year.
So when I first entered the program in my first year, we had to make some out-of-pocket costs in terms of the film that we were buying for our projects, or like our visual studies kits that we needed for our drawing classes. And those were all costs that everybody had to make, and they were all the same for everyone. So I kind of in my head treated them like textbook equivalent costs, because we weren't buying many textbooks for our other classes. But then as time went on, those costs became not the same for everybody. It became kind of what you were able and wanted to invest in your individual films or projects. And then it became very clear that, the people that had more expendable income, that they were willing to invest in their films that they were getting graded on, their school projects had a higher production value, did better in class. And then the disparity between students kind of became more clear as we went on throughout our years.
This disparity sparks a larger conversation surrounding financial prosperity in fashion and film.
All these conversations about all these white creators being made and being able to tell their stories way more than people of color, like it's not the main thing, but a huge intersectionality about that is the financial prosperity of that group to be able to put money into their story. So it's all connections, prosperity, financial prosperity. It's all like it's not like you can't do it without that, but that is absolutely a huge advantage in the industry. And clearly it starts from the very beginning.
Despite there being cheaper alternatives for select projects, some students do not have the luxury of spending hundreds of dollars a year on top of tuition. If cutting these costs from programs is unreasonable, these students are calling for more transparency prior to enrollment. For the Ryersonian, I'm Briana-Lynn Brieiro.